The Villani had spent 300 cycles building their perfect society. Their crystal cities sparkled under the twin suns of Vela Prime, where every citizen lived in harmony with nature and each other. Violence was a concept they had read about in ancient texts, but never witnessed. Their weapons were tools of mining and construction, not war. Ambassador Silex floated gracefully through the council chamber, her translucent wings catching the morning light. As the head of the First Contact Committee, she felt the weight of history on her delicate shoulders. The radio signals from the third planet of the Sol system had been decoded after years of careful work. The messages spoke of peace, exploration, and friendship. "The transmission analysis is complete," announced researcher Thymol, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence as he reviewed the data. "These humans appear to be remarkably similar to us in temperament. Their messages contain poetry, music, and expressions of love. They speak of protecting their young and caring for their elders." Silex nodded, her antennae twitching with excitement. "What about their technology level?" "Primitive by our standards," Thymol replied. "They've barely escaped their gravity well. Their vessels use crude chemical propulsion. It will take them several hundred of their years to reach us, assuming they develop faster than light travel." The council members exchanged pleased vibrations. Perfect. A young species, full of wonder and innocence, just like the Villani had been long ago. They could guide these humans, share their wisdom, help them avoid the mistakes that other species had made. "What of their world?" asked Counselor Vex, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Thymol's expression grew puzzled. "This is where the data becomes unusual. Their planet registers as a Class 12 death world on our habitability scale." Silence fell over the chamber. Death worlds were theoretical constructs, planets so hostile that complex life shouldn't exist. The Villani's own world was a peaceful Class 2, with gentle weather and abundant resources. "Surely there's an error," Silex said softly. "No intelligent species could evolve on such a world." "I checked the readings 17 times, Thymol insisted. "Massive storms that could level our cities. Temperature variations that would flash freeze or boil our biology. Radiation from their star that would sterilize our surface. Tectonic activity that reshapes continents. And the gravity—" He paused dramatically. "3 times what we consider survivable." Counselor Vex's wings fluttered nervously. Perhaps they evolved underground? In sheltered environments? Thymol accessed another data file. Their transmissions suggest otherwise. They speak of oceans and mountains and open sky as if they experience these things directly. They even have recreational activities that involve jumping from great heights or diving into water bodies. The council was quiet, processing this information. Finally, Silex spoke. "It doesn't matter how harsh their world is. Their messages prove they are peaceful, intelligent beings. We will welcome them as friends when they arrive." Over the following decades, the Villani prepared for first contact. They built beautiful guest facilities on their moon, Vela 2, where the lower gravity and controlled environment would be more comfortable for their future guests. They composed welcome songs and prepared gifts of art and technology. The human transmissions continued to arrive, delayed by the vast distances of space. Children's laughter, orchestral music, and philosophical discussions about the nature of existence. The Villani fell in love with humanity before they ever met them. Dr. Xylith, the Villani's leading xenobiologist, spent years studying the biological data gleaned from human transmissions. "Their protein structures are fascinating," she told her colleagues. "They appear to be carbon-based, like us, but adapted for their harsh environment. I estimate they're about twice our size and significantly more dense." "Dense?" Silex asked. "Their world's gravity would compress any being living there. They've likely evolved denser bones and muscle tissue. But their transmissions show they value art, music, and poetry just as we do." Size is irrelevant when it comes to the beauty of the soul. The years passed. Human technology advanced at an unprecedented rate. What should have taken them centuries, they accomplished in decades. The Volani watched with admiration as humanity developed fusion power, advanced computing, and even primitive faster-than-light communication. Then came the day that changed everything. Long-range sensors detect an approaching vessel, announced the monitoring station on Vela 4. Configuration unknown, but the energy signature matches human technology. Silex felt her 3 hearts flutter with joy. After 47 cycles of preparation, first contact was finally at hand. She gathered the welcoming committee and prepared to make history. The human ship appeared on their screens 12 hours later. It was massive, far larger than any of their own vessels. Its hull was dark and angular, covered in what appeared to be armor plating. Strange protrusions dotted its surface, and energy readings suggested it carried power plants, comparable to those that lit entire Volani cities. "It's larger than our capital ships," whispered navigation specialist Corvex. "Perhaps there are spacefaring people who live aboard their vessels," Silex suggested hopefully. "A nomadic species would need large ships for their families." The human ship entered orbit around Vela Prime and transmitted a message. When it was decoded, the words were simple. "This is the UES Prometheus. We've come to establish peaceful relations with the Volani people." Silex felt tears of joy well up in her large eyes. They had come in peace, just as their transmissions had promised. She quickly composed a reply. "Welcome, friends from Earth. We are honored by your arrival. We have prepared facilities for your comfort and look forward to cultural exchange." The response came quickly. "We appreciate your hospitality. Preparing to send a diplomatic team to the surface. Please designate a suitable landing area." Silex chose the ceremonial grounds near the capital city. Millions of Volani gathered to witness this historic moment, their wings creating a shimmering sea of color in the afternoon light. The welcome committee positioned themselves at the landing site, carrying gifts and flowers from their most beautiful gardens. The human shuttle descended through Vela Prime's atmosphere with none of the grace the Volani expected. Instead of the smooth, silent approach their own craft used, the human vessel came down in a controlled burn, its engines roaring like contained explosions. The sound alone was unlike anything the Volani had ever experienced, raw, powerful, and somehow threatening despite its purpose. As the shuttle touched down, support struts extended from its hull and locked into the ground with metallic clanks that echoed across the ceremonial grounds. The vessel was scarred and worn. Its hull marked with what looked like battle damage, but was probably just the wear of traveling through space debris and radiation. The airlock cycled open with a hiss of equalizing pressure, and the Volani held their collective breath. What emerged was not what they had expected. The first human to step onto Volani soil was enormous. Even crouched slightly to fit through the airlock, the being stood nearly 3 times the height of the tallest Volani. Its body was encased in what appeared to be protective armor, dark and functional, with a transparent faceplate that revealed features that were somehow both alien and disturbingly familiar. The human's eyes were small and intense, focused with a predatory alertness that made every Volani instinctively step back. When it moved, it was with controlled power, like a natural disaster temporarily contained in biological form. Even its simple act of walking caused vibrations in the ground that the sensitive Volani could feel through their delicate feet. More humans emerged from the shuttle. All were similar in size and bearing, their equipment clearly designed for function over beauty. They carried devices that could have been tools or weapons. The Volani couldn't tell the difference. One of the humans stepped forward and spoke through a translation device. "Greetings. I am Commander Sarah Chen of Earth's Diplomatic Corps. We thank you for your welcome. Silex tried to respond, but found herself unable to speak. The human's voice, even filtered through the translator, carried undertones of barely controlled aggression. Every movement suggested coiled strength, as if these beings were constantly ready for violence despite their peaceful words. Dr. Xylith, watching from the observation platform, felt her scientific mind racing. The theoretical calculations about gravity and environment suddenly took on terrifying new meaning. These weren't just adapted to a harsh world. They were weapons forged by that world, living engines of destruction wrapped in diplomatic protocol. Commander Chen looked around at the assembled Villani, and for just a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Surprise? Confusion? The Villani couldn't interpret the expression, but they could sense something had changed in the human's assessment of the situation. Perhaps, Chen said carefully, we should discuss the terms of our cultural exchange. As she spoke, Silex finally understood the magnitude of their error. The humans hadn't come as friends seeking guidance. They had come as something else entirely, something the peaceful Villani couldn't even comprehend. The welcoming flowers fell from her nerveless fingers as she realized that her people's perfect world was about to face something for which 300 cycles of peace had left them completely unprepared. In the distance, more human shuttles were beginning their descent. The diplomatic meeting was scheduled for the next morning in the Grand Assembly Hall, the most beautiful structure on Vela Prime. Its crystalline walls rose like frozen music toward the sky, designed to inspire peace and reflection. Today, it felt more like a trap. Ambassador Silex had spent the night in restless worry, reviewing everything they knew about humans. Their own intelligence seemed woefully inadequate now that she had seen the reality of these beings. Dr. Xylith's biological projections hadn't prepared them for the sheer presence these creatures commanded simply by existing. "Status report," Silex requested as she entered the preparation chamber. Researcher Thymol's 4 eyes were dim with exhaustion. "The human diplomatic team consists of 12 individuals. They've requested permission to bring recording equipment and what they call standard diplomatic security measures." "Security measures?" "We granted the request before understanding what it meant," Thymol admitted. "They're bringing armed guards." The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The Villani had no concept of guards. No Villani had raised a weapon against another in living memory. The idea that diplomats would need protection from their hosts was incomprehensible. "Armed with what?" Silex asked weakly. "Unknown. Our scanners detect dense metallic objects, but we have no reference for weapon technology." As the morning sun reached its peak, the human delegation arrived. Commander Chen led the group, flanked by 2 beings who could only be the guards. If Chen was intimidating, these new humans were terrifying. They wore lighter armor that showed more of their physique, revealing the true scope of the adaptive evolution that had shaped them. Their shoulders were broader than a Villani's entire wingspan. Their limbs were thick with muscle that looked capable of crushing crystal with casual force. They moved with the fluid precision of apex predators, their eyes constantly scanning for threats that didn't exist in the Villani's peaceful world. The weapons they carried were sleek and purposeful. Even without understanding their function, every Villani present could sense they were designed to end life with efficient brutality. "Greetings," Commander Chen said as she entered the assembly hall. Her voice echoed strangely in the space designed for gentle Villani acoustics. "We appreciate this opportunity for cultural exchange." Silex managed to find her voice. "Welcome. Please, make yourselves comfortable." The humans looked around the hall with expressions that were difficult to read. One of the guards said something in their native language that wasn't translated. Chen responded sharply, and the guard fell silent. "Beautiful architecture," Chen said diplomatically. "Your people have clearly mastered crystal growth technology." It was grown, yes, but by artists, not technology, Silex replied. Our builders sing to the crystals, encouraging them to grow in pleasing forms. Something flickered across Chen's face. Sung, too. Dr. Xylith stepped forward, eager to explain their culture. Sound vibrations encourage crystalline formation. It's an art form that takes decades to master. The walls of this hall were grown over 3 generations by the Melodic Architects Guild. One of the human guards, a massive female with scars visible on her exposed arms, leaned toward Chen and whispered something. Chen's expression grew more serious. Fascinating, Chen said. On Earth, construction typically involves more robust methods. Please tell us about your building techniques, Silex said, hoping to establish common ground. Chen gestured to one of her team, a human with the bearing of an engineer. This is Dr. Martinez, our structural specialist. Dr. Martinez stepped forward, and when he spoke, his casual words sent chills through every Villani present. We mostly use explosives to shape terrain, then pour molten metal and concrete into frameworks. For larger projects, we use nuclear-powered construction mechs. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Nuclear power was something the Villani used only in carefully contained research facilities, and the casual mention of explosives in construction was horrifying. Explosives? Dr. Xylith asked faintly. Chemical charges mostly, sometimes shaped nuclear charges for really big jobs. We terraformed Mars using controlled asteroid impacts. Dr. Martinez seemed to realize something was wrong. Is there a problem? Counselor Vex had gone pale, her natural translucency making her appear almost invisible. You destroy things to build? The humans exchanged glances. Commander Chen stepped in smoothly. Perhaps we could discuss cultural exchanges. We brought samples of human art and music. Grateful for the subject change, Silex gestured to the prepared display area. Please, we're eager to learn about your creative traditions. Chen nodded to another team member who produced a device and activated it. The hall filled with sound unlike anything the Villani had ever experienced. It was music, technically, but it was aggressive and primal. Heavy percussion that seemed designed to simulate violence, stringed instruments that screamed rather than sang, and vocal patterns that sounded like battle cries. The Villani covered their auditory organs in distress. Their own music was gentle, contemplative, designed to encourage peace and reflection. This human music seemed intended to incite aggression and prepare minds for conflict. That's heavy metal, Dr. Martinez explained helpfully. One of our popular genres. This particular song is called Thunderstrike by Iron Battalion. Very energetic, Silex managed. Oh, that's mild, one of the guards said. You should hear death metal. Death metal. The words themselves were terrifying to beings who had no concept of glorifying mortality. Chen quickly moved to the next demonstration. This is visual art from our Renaissance period. She displayed images on a holographic projector. The first image was of a human figure, muscles defined with anatomical precision, straining against bonds. The Villani found it disturbing. Why would anyone create art showing suffering? This is Michelangelo's The Dying Slave, Chen explained. It's considered one of our masterpieces. The next image was worse. A massive human warrior holding a severed head, standing over fallen enemies. Blood was depicted in vivid detail, and the warrior's expression showed savage triumph. David and Goliath by Caravaggio, Chen continued, seemingly oblivious to the horror on every Villani face. The story of a young man defeating a giant warrior in single combat. Dr. Xylith made a sound like breaking crystal. Your children fight giants? Well, not literally, Chen said. It's a metaphor for overcoming adversity through violence. She paused, finally noticing the Villani reactions. These are historical pieces, very old. How old? Silex asked, hoping they were from humanity's barbaric past. About 500 years. 500 years was nothing in Villani terms. It meant humans had been creating art celebrating violence and death in what was essentially their present era. The cultural exchange continued to deteriorate. The humans presented literature that focused on conflict, war, and survival against impossible odds. They described sports that involved deliberate physical contact and injury. They casually mentioned entertainment where people paid to watch others fight until one was defeated. When it came time for the Villani to share their culture, the contrast was stark. Their music sounded weak and meaningless to human ears. Their art, focused on harmony and beauty, seemed to confuse the visitors. Their literature, full of contemplation and peaceful resolution, appeared to bore them. "Do you have any martial arts?" asked one of the guards during a break in presentations. "Martial arts?" Silex repeated. "Combat training, self-defense, fighting techniques." The concept was so foreign that it took several minutes to even find words to explain their lack of such knowledge. The humans listened with expressions of growing bewilderment. "What do you do if someone attacks you?" the guard pressed. "No one attacks anyone," Dr. Xylith explained. "It doesn't happen. But if it did, it doesn't." The human guard looked to her companions with an expression that clearly communicated her assessment. These beings were helpless prey. Commander Chen tried to salvage the situation. "Perhaps we could discuss trade opportunities. Earth has many resources that might interest you." Counselor Vex perked up slightly. "What do you have in abundance?" "Heavy metals, radioactive materials, rare earth elements for weapons manufacturing. Oh, and agricultural products designed for high radiation environments." Each item on the list made the situation worse. The humans had abundance only in things that were dangerous or related to destruction. "What about peaceful technologies?" Silex asked desperately. "Scientific instruments, art materials, cultural items." Dr. Martinez consulted a tablet. "Most of our scientific instruments are dual-use military applications. Art materials, well, we have synthetic pigments originally developed for camouflage. And our cultural items," he trailed off. Apparently realizing that most human cultural items had violent origins or applications. The final blow came when one of the younger humans, apparently trying to be helpful, mentioned their entertainment industry. "You'd love our movies," he said enthusiastically. "We've got great war films, action adventures, horror stories. There's this one series about an alien invasion where humanity fights back against overwhelming odds. Really inspiring stuff." Horror stories. Entertainment based on fear and suffering. As the day wore on, a terrible truth became clear to everyone in the room. This wasn't a first contact between two peaceful species. This was a meeting between sheep and wolves, with the wolves politely pretending not to notice how delicious the sheep looked. The humans weren't inherently evil. They were trying to be diplomatic, even friendly. But everything about them, from their casual mention of violence to their inability to understand a world without conflict, marked them as beings shaped by a reality so harsh that it had forged them into living weapons. Commander Chen finally addressed the elephant in the room as the formal presentations concluded. "I'm beginning to understand," she said carefully, "that your people have never experienced warfare." "Warfare?" Silex asked. Chen paused, choosing her words with obvious care. "Large-scale conflict between groups, military action, war." The Villani had the concept in their historical archives, but it was theoretical, like discussing the interior of a black hole. "Never," Silex confirmed. Chen nodded slowly, and something in her expression shifted. For the first time since their arrival, the humans looked genuinely thoughtful rather than merely polite. "We need to discuss some things among ourselves," Chen said. "Would it be possible to reconvene tomorrow?" As the humans filed out of the assembly hall, their guards moving with that predatory awareness that never ceased, Silex finally understood the true scope of their situation. The humans hadn't come as conquerors. They had come as friends. That might be even more terrifying. Commander Sarah Chen stood in the human quarters aboard the Prometheus, staring at the tactical display that showed Vela Prime's defensive capabilities. The answer was simple. They had none. No orbital defenses, no military installations, no weapons of any kind. The entire planet was defenseless as a newborn. "Ma'am," said Lieutenant Torres, her security chief, "I've completed the reconnaissance scan. Their entire civilization couldn't resist a single squad of Marines armed with training weapons." Chen rubbed her temples, feeling the weight of an impossible situation. "What's your assessment of their technology?" "Advanced in some areas, primitive in others. They've got stellar engineering, faster-than-light communication, and energy manipulation that's beyond our current capabilities, but their manufacturing is all based on biological processes. Their transportation systems are designed for beings that weigh 30 pounds soaking wet, and they've never developed anything we'd recognize as defensive technology." Dr. Martinez looked up from his analysis tablet. "Commander, I don't think they even understand what weapons are. When I mentioned explosive charges, they looked like I'd announced I was going to eat their children. Because to them, you basically did," said Dr. Sarah Kim, the mission's xenobiologist. "I've been analyzing their physiology and behavior. These people are so peaceful that the concept of intentional harm might be literally foreign to their psychology." Chen turned to face her team. 12 of Earth's finest trained diplomats and soldiers who had been prepared for any form of first contact except this one. "Recommendations?" "We could take this entire star system without firing a shot," Torres said bluntly. "They couldn't stop us if they wanted to, and they wouldn't want to even if they could." "That's not why we're here, Lieutenant." "I know, ma'am. But we need to acknowledge the reality. We're dealing with a species that's never faced adversity. They've never had to fight for survival, never had to compete for resources, never had to defend themselves against anything. They're like—" She struggled for comparison. "Like if sheep had evolved intelligence without ever encountering wolves." Dr. Kim nodded grimly. "Their world is what Earth might have been if we'd never had predators, natural disasters, or resource scarcity. Perfect climate, abundant everything, no competing species. They evolved intelligence through leisure, not necessity. While we," Dr. Martinez added quietly, "evolved intelligence through 10 million years of everything trying to kill us." Chen felt the familiar weight of command decisions. Earth's first contact protocols covered many scenarios, but not this one. How do you establish peaceful relations with a species so naive they couldn't conceive of harm? A communication alert chimed. "Incoming transmission from Ambassador Silex," the AI announced. Chen activated the display. Silex appeared, her delicate features showing signs of distress that were becoming familiar. "Commander Chen," Silex began, her translated voice trembling slightly, "we have received troubling reports from our long-range sensors. A fleet of vessels has entered our outer system. The energy signatures, they match your technology, but they're much larger." Chen felt ice in her veins. "How many vessels?" 17 major ships, 43 smaller craft. They're moving rapidly toward our position." Chen's mind raced. Only one organization had that many ships in this sector, the Hadean Consortium, Earth's most aggressive colonial expansion group. They weren't military, but they weren't peaceful either. They specialized in resource acquisition and strategic development, euphemisms for taking what they wanted from species too weak to stop them. "Silex," Chen said carefully, "those aren't our ships." "But they're human vessels?" "Yes, but not ours. They represent a different faction of humanity." Chen made a decision that would change everything. "We need to meet immediately. There are things about humans you need to understand." An hour later, the entire Vellani Council had assembled in emergency session. Chen stood before them with her full team, no longer bothering with diplomatic courtesy. The truth was too dangerous for politeness. The ships approaching your system belong to what we call corporate expansionists, Chen began. They're looking for resources and territory. They've claimed dozens of worlds in the past century. Claimed? Counselor Vex asked. Taken by force, Chen clarified. Conquered, occupied. The words hit the Villani like physical blows. Dr. Xyleth made a sound like cracking crystal. But why would anyone take what isn't theirs? Because they can, Torres answered bluntly. And because you can't stop them. Chen shot her lieutenant a warning look, but pressed on. There's something else you need to know about humans. We're not all the same. Earth isn't unified under one government. We have over 200 sovereign nations, dozens of corporate entities, and several independent colonies. Not all of them share our diplomatic approach. You fight each other? Silex asked in horror. Constantly, Dr. Martinez said. We've been at war somewhere on Earth continuously for the past 5,000 years. The silence in the chamber was deafening. Finally, Silex found her voice. What will these other humans do when they arrive? Chen exchanged glances with her team. The truth was brutal, but necessary. They'll offer you a protection contract. Sign their treaty, give them mining rights and territorial concessions, and they'll defend you from other threats. And if we refuse, they'll demonstrate why you need protection by creating the threat themselves. Thimal's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of extreme agitation. They'll attack us? Not directly, not at first. They'll establish a presence in your outer system. Start mining operations on your uninhabited worlds. When you object, they'll point out that you can't stop them. They'll offer increasingly generous contracts until you have no choice but to accept their terms. But that's... Silex struggled for words. That's evil. No, Chen said sadly. That's human. We're a species that evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day for millions of years. Competition and conflict aren't aberrations in human nature. They're fundamental to who we are. Dr. Kim stepped forward. Your people represent everything humanity has never been. Peaceful, trusting, cooperative. It's beautiful and pure, and exactly the kind of civilization that gets destroyed when it meets us. Torres checked her tactical display. Consortium fleet will be in communication range in 18 hours. They'll be here in 72. Chen made the hardest decision of her career. Silex, I'm about to violate my orders and probably end my diplomatic career. But there's one option we haven't discussed. What option? Protection that actually protects. Chen turned to her team. Torres, how many Marines do we have aboard the Prometheus? 200, ma'am. Full combat loadout. Dr. Martinez, our defensive capabilities? We're a diplomatic vessel, but we're armed. Point defense systems, plasma cannons, kinetic interceptors. We could hold off a consortium fleet for maybe 6 hours in direct engagement. Chen nodded and turned back to Silex. Here's what I'm proposing. We establish an Earth Federation protectorate over Vela Prime, official diplomatic recognition, full territorial sovereignty, and a mutual defense treaty. What does that mean? Silex asked. It means, when the consortium arrives, they'll find a Federation diplomatic mission already in place. Attacking you becomes an act of war against Earth's legitimate government. Torres raised an eyebrow. Ma'am, that's not exactly within our authority. I'm aware of that, Lieutenant. But sometimes field commanders have to make decisions that politicians can sort out later. Dr. Kim looked thoughtful. There would be conditions, wouldn't there? Things the Villani would need to do? Chen nodded reluctantly. Federation law requires that protectorate species maintain minimum defensive capabilities. You'd need to allow us to establish a permanent military presence. You'd need to accept human military advisors, and... She paused, knowing how this would sound. You'd need to allow us to train Volani in basic self-defense. The horror on every Volani face was immediate and absolute. Silex spoke for all of them. You want us to learn violence? I want you to survive, Chen replied. In the galaxy we know, peaceful species don't last long. You can either learn to defend yourselves, or you can be defended by others who will eventually become your masters. Counselor Vex stood, her wings trembling. There must be another way. There is, Chen said quietly. You can trust that every human you meet will be as benevolent as we've tried to be. But I can guarantee you that won't happen. The consortium is already on its way, and they won't be the last. Dr. Xyleth spoke up. If we agree to this protectorate, what would you require? Torres answered. Basic defensive installations. Orbital monitoring stations. A small marine garrison. Training facilities for local security forces. Security forces? Silex asked. Volani trained in basic defensive tactics, Chen explained. Not soldiers as we understand them, but beings capable of recognizing and responding to threats. The council conferred in musical tones too rapid for the translation system to process. When they finished, Silex turned back to Chen with an expression of profound sadness. Commander, you're asking us to become something we've never been. I'm asking you to become something that can survive in a universe that doesn't care about your peaceful intentions. And if we refuse? Chen gestured toward the display showing the approaching consortium fleet. Then in 72 hours, you'll meet humans who won't give you a choice. The decision took 3 hours of debate. In the end, it wasn't really a choice at all. The Volani Council voted to accept Federation protection. 2 days later, when the consortium fleet arrived, they found Vela Prime flying Federation colors and defended by Federation Marines. The corporate commander, a man named Davidson, whose reputation for ruthless expansion was known throughout human space, could only transmit his protests to Earth and withdraw to a position outside the system's territorial boundary. Commander Chen watched from the observation deck as the consortium ships departed. Beside her, Ambassador Salix looked out at the stars with new understanding. Your people aren't evil, Salix said finally. But you're dangerous in ways we never imagined. We're the product of a dangerous universe, Chen replied. We make everything we touch a little more dangerous, whether we mean to or not. The Marines you've stationed here seem kind enough. They are. But they're also trained killers who could slaughter every Volani on this planet if ordered to do so. That's the paradox of humanity. Our capacity for both protection and destruction comes from the same source. Silex was quiet for a long moment. Will we become like you? I hope not, Chen said honestly. I hope you find a way to remain who you are while learning enough about violence to defend against it. But I can't promise that's possible. As they watched, Federation construction crews began building the first defensive platforms in Volani space. It was the beginning of a new era for both species, one where the galaxy's most peaceful civilization would be protected by its most dangerous one. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Months later, when Earth's politicians finally ratified the Protectorate Treaty that Chen had negotiated without authorization, she received a commendation rather than a court-martial. The Federation had gained a strategic foothold in the galactic core, and the Volani had gained something they'd never needed before, the protection of friends who happened to be the most effective killers in known space. It wasn't the first contact either species had hoped for, but it was the one that let both of them survive in a universe where survival was never guaranteed. And in the end, perhaps that was friendship enough.